Joining us now as a part of our NFL Super Wildcard Weekend preview is Jacksonville Jaguars beat reporter for the Florida Times-Union, Demetrius Harvey. Demetrius, good to see you tonight. How are things down in the great state of Florida?
Good to see you guys too. Yeah, I mean it's going great. Obviously it wasn't something that any of us expected to happen for the Jaguars to make the playoffs. The excitement in the city is palpable. It's probably the most excited I've ever seen the city. I've grown up in Jacksonville. Not born and raised, but pretty much. So just seeing everybody happy and talking to the players, talking to the coaches, all that good stuff. I mean, you can tell just how much it means to them. So everything in Jacksonville, and I'm looking forward to covering a playoff game.
Yeah, truly amazing to see what's gone on there with the Jags, and they finished the season 9-8 on a 5-game winning streak. And the best part about it too, Demetrius, is that, again, I said this to Mike just before you got here. I am channeling my inner Doug Peterson with the visor there, of course. And the best part too, since they gave this out, I was saying to Mike after. When the Eagles were raising the banner, was the Philly, just the play that he called underneath. They gave this out as a little thing. So while we channel Doug Peterson, because he's obviously former Eagles royalty and everything along those lines, I am so happy for him that and obviously for the Jacksonville Jaguars organization, because it's been a legitimate disaster for so many the fans, the players. Trevor Lawrence had come in never losing a game, and last year was a disaster. This year it started off pretty bad. And, obviously we're seeing the transition from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson, and it's really night and day, Demetrius. It's truly amazing. And for you've covered this team before Dougie. So what's really gone on there in the atmosphere down in Jacksonville?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's almost impossible. Like you almost want to move past Urban, but you really can't, because you can't move past him while you talk about Doug and the job that he's done, because just how awful it was in Jacksonville last year. I covered both Urban last year and then obviously Doug this year, and it's night and day. I mean, last year Urban was leaving early. There were obviously disagreements within the staff itself. There was infighting. I don't know necessarily amongst the players, but definitely within the organization on in terms of how Urban treated the players. It was almost like a college-like atmosphere, how it was run. The players did not trust him from week 4 onward, probably earlier. It just was terrible. They had broken the trust, or he had broken the trust of the players so much that when Doug got here, he had to earn their trust. He had to make concerted efforts to make sure that these guys were good. There were certain things he did, in the beginning for veteran minicamp. Those are normally mandatory. He gave them off, and I remember when that happened. Even I was like, this is a 3-14 team. Why are you giving them any days off? Um, but it makes sense now. If you go now, it might be a little bit hindsight bias or whatever, but it makes sense because at that point he has to be able to say to the veterans, like, I got your back. We don't necessarily need these 3 days, so guess what, you guys are going to be off. We're going to work with the rookies. We're going to get the team right. But the little things like that, chipping away at the sort of shield they cast upon themselves after Urban, that's sort of how he's sort of gained their trust. Obviously winning will help that too. But I think that the job he's done to turn this around so quickly, change the culture, has been great. So he's been fantastic. All the Urban garbage or whatever was kind of thrown away. Now it's just sort of going ahead, moving forward in the future. I think that Doug has done a fantastic job.
What I find really amazing is obviously, this team lost to Detroit 40-14, and everyone pretty much wrote off Jacksonville. And it
Yeah.
was all Tennessee at the time. It was all Ryan Tannehill. It was all Derrick Henry. And, the Colts at the time were still a laughing stock. The Jags, they were like, all right, no problem. But this team was not expected to be where they are today. And there's a lot of folks that are, betting on this team to win come Saturday against the on Saturday against the Chargers. And from your perspective, Demetrius, after that 40-14 loss against Detroit, what changed?
I think So just from talking with the players and the coaches and everything over the past few weeks, what really up call for them because they had already gone through that 5 game losing streak, and then they had the miraculous win against the Ravens the week before.
Yeah.
So everybody was sort of thinking, all right, maybe this is a change, or maybe they're going to get onto the right track, and then all of a sudden, boom, it hit them. They were not changing. 40-14, Trevor Lawrence. When you first watch the play where he got hurt, you're like, the season's over because Trevor's done for sure. You
Yeah.
thought he was just, his knee was gone. Like that was the immediate reaction to that. Then it came out, it was his foot, and then it was his toe, and it ended up being pretty much nothing essentially. But really, what changed is that they needed that wake up call to say, hey, we haven't made it yet, and if we're gonna go out there, play with no energy, play with almost no fight, like we had already, won the Super Bowl the week prior because of that comeback and how amazing that felt.
Yeah.
I think what they realized was, hey, we can't do that anymore. So that's sort of what flipped the script. Obviously, nobody had them going into Tennessee that next week and winning. I didn't have them doing that because, I mean, how could you? After that loss, you're thinking Derrick Henry's going to run all over them. They're not going to be able to do much on offense because they just didn't against a bad, in my opinion, Detroit Lions defense, at least that week. So it just didn't make sense. But then I think it was just more of a, hey, sit back. We have everything in front of us. Let's just play free. Let's play with a lot of energy. And they sort of rode that high all the way until now.
Yeah, truly amazing stuff to see what's going on there, and we continue to bring up obviously all of the culture change has been so crucial for what Dougie has brought. Mike, take it over.
Yeah, Demetrius. So, I mean, we talked about how this, so it's after the 3-7 start, they really flipped the script on this year to get to this point. Let's take it to Sunday night's game, and they started that game really slowly, and then obviously we saw them get back into it, the scoop and score to win it from Josh Allen. How what was the difference between last couple weeks, that 36-22 game against Tennessee, and this week?
I think what really happened in this game, it was probably a combination of things. Tennessee adjusted. I mean, Mike Vrabel is a good coach. I know they've had a terrible end of the season, losing 7 straight. That's remarkable, honestly, in what they've done in a bad way. But he's a good coach. I think that he knows, what Doug Peterson likes to do. They got kind of caught off guard, it seemed like, the first go around, but they were also missing several key players. I know Autry was missing. There was a linebacker missing, a couple other guys. I can't name them right now, but they weren't the healthiest team then. I mean, even Tannehill was, still dealing with a similar ankle injury until he kind of finally just broke whatever it was, and so he had to land on IR. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest difference is that Titans were healthy on defense. They understood how to attack the Jaguars offense. They were taking away all the little short things that the Jags like to do, where they sort of send a guy in motion and then roll out Trevor, and then all of a sudden he has 2 guys, a tight end, usually on 2 levels of the playing field, and they took all those away. They tried to run it 4 times at least. None of them worked. So there were little things like that sort of hurt the Jags offense. I think that's why the slow start, honestly, the slow entire game. They had -1 yards in the fourth quarter. The offense was not good. But what flipped was on defense. You're going against Josh Dobbs, first of all. So that's, a gain for the Jaguars defense. You get the turnover with Tyson Campbell. That sort of changed the momentum a little bit. You slow down Derrick Henry. They did a pretty good job of slowing him down for the most part. I know Rayshawn Jenkins got stiff armed, that I'm sure everybody has seen multiple times, but for the most part, they did pretty well. And so, throughout the course of the game, they got opportunistic at the very end and scored the touchdown. That's pretty much what happened. I mean, the Jaguars were going to lose until that, fumble 6 happens. Other than that, it would have been hard to see them going down the field just because of how the offense was. So it was just a mix of, the Titans just played better and they had healthier players, and Jags kind of, I don't know if they were caught off guard, but it was just a little bit slower developing for them.
Now, while he didn't have the biggest impact, I would say, on Sunday night, I thought there was an interesting quote that they mentioned in the broadcast from Doug Peterson about Evan Ingram, who's had such a really good year down in Jacksonville. about how, there's always been, whether he was with the Giants earlier in his career and whatnot, about his frame being more of a wide receiver. And, they asked Doug Peterson, he's still listed as a tight end. And they say, well, we can't list him as a wide receiver because then we'd have to pay him wide receiver money. And he's had such a great impact this year among many of the Jaguars' weapons. Is it all just down to coaching, or what adjustments have the players made? Just a better relationship between quarterback and offense? What's been the story behind this resurgence from him?
Yeah, for Evan in general, I think that I think that's funny. He's a, people view him as a wide receiver. I agree with that to an extent. But he's been incredible at blocking this year. It's kind of remarkable. That guy 6'3", and he's really 6'3", and 220 pounds, probably soaking wet. At least it seems like. But going back to it, I think that it's a combination of really Doug Peterson's offense is actually incredible. I mean, it just really is. The way he moves players around, the way he uses them, it's almost like, when you watch a 49ers game, you watch Shanahan work. I mean, the things that he's doing with Brock Purdy is incredible. It's similar to Jacksonville, where he knows how to get people open, and he knows Evan's strengths, and he knows the routes that he can win at. And so he uses that. He uses the matchups, the advantages, and all of that. That's something that Evan wasn't getting necessarily with the Giants. I mean, if you look back, I mean, he had Eli Manning throwing to him, an old Eli Manning, Daniel Jones, an outdated offense. I forgot who the offense coordinator there was, but I think he used to coach the Cowboys. But either way,
Garrett,
yeah, Jason Garrett. So he's an old school guy. He's not going to use all the motions, all the crazy things, the concepts. They might split him out wide a couple times, but other than that, it's nothing remarkable. But Doug Peterson does that. He utilizes all his guys, which is sort of why Evan's sort of seen this resurgence where he's had a career best year as far as catches and yards, and it's because they've been multiple with what they got. And plus, Trevor Lawrence, we haven't really talked about him too much, but you can't overstate how much having a fantastic quarterback does for players. It brings everybody up a notch. There's a reason why everybody laughed at Christian Kirk making what he does, and now no one's saying a word because, he's doing well. So I think it's just a combination of guys like Doug, obviously manufacturing guys open, and then Trevor finding them.
And one man you also did not bring up, too, who has really been crucial to all of this, is Press Taylor, too, your team's offensive coordinator. That's something else. But before we move on, though, for all of the folks that are up here in the New York metro area, because Demetrius, you brought up and I'm going to just point out three different things. You said about Evan Ingram. You said the words incredible and a few other things. Every single Giants fan that has been watching this so far, their heads just exploded. I can see Mike Szabo's head also exploding too once we're done here. It's amazing to see because everyone wanted Evan Ingram's head on a platter up here in New York. It's absolutely hysterical, but it's an amazing feat to see what he's doing. And that's why I'm laughing, because as Mike says it and as you're saying it, I'm like, this is fantastic. Again, as I told you, I'm an Eagles fan. It's great to see the Giants losing. So it was fantastic to see Evan Ingram, go down there, and now Dougie's working with him. It's great. But
it's funny because during training camp, Evan had a drop, and I tweeted it. I was kind of tweeting it just to show, hey, they had a mistake here. The defense made a play. And everybody in Giants country, I guess, were in my mentions. From that, I was like, they hate this guy, like legitimately hate him. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the tone. But I don't see any Giants fans in my mentions anymore. As if I mention Evan Ingram, there's no Giants fans, all Jags. So just the tables have turned.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about Daniel Ballinger now, right, Mike? Or Daniel Bellinger, right, Mike? That's I think the new guy now. Yeah. But the next thing, though, Demetrius, is, we spoke about Press Taylor before. We spoke about Christian Kirk before, but let's start with Press, because he was in Philadelphia with Doug Peterson there, and he was a big part of the reason why Carson Wentz had the near MVP season in the Super Bowl season. And he was their assistant quarterbacks coach, and he's been with Doug for as long as he's been a head coach. And now he's the offensive coordinator. He was kind of the quarterback's guru. He worked with Nick Foles during the Super Bowl year when Wentz went down. He worked with Foles the year after when they went to the NFC Divisional. They eventually lost to New Orleans. But now you're seeing the true value also of what Press Taylor brings to a ball club. And you're seeing it here on full display as the offensive coordinator. He's so creative, and obviously it's working with Trevor Lawrence as well. What have you seen from him, and have you gotten a chance to talk with Press Taylor about, his journey to becoming this offensive coordinator and to really now work be hands-on with not only a Super Bowl champion in Foles, but also he worked with Wentz too. Now he can put all of that to Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, right. I mean, Press, every week, obviously, they bring up the offensive coordinator for us to talk to. I haven't necessarily sat down with him one-on-one and sort of dove deep or anything like that. But from what I can tell, he's incredibly bright. I mean, it's clear how much he means to this team in terms of, I think he's probably one of the better guys to have for structure. It just seems like it, because that's sort of what Doug will ask him to do. He's not calling the plays necessarily, but he's putting together game plans. He's working in the meetings. Anytime you mention the offense, Trevor always brings up Press. Press, Mike McCoy, the quarterback coach, and Doug. Those are the three main guys that have been instrumental to this success. I think what Press is sort of vying for, and maybe this will come a few years down the road, is a head coaching job. I mean, just sitting there, listening to him talk, and I know it might be harder for him to do that without calling the plays, but just listening to him speak, you can tell just how bright he is and how much knowledge he has of the game, of how to make a quarterback function, of turning around an offense. I think Doug will tell you, without Press, this offense might not be the same. It might not be as good. I think that's the type of coach that Doug thinks that Press is, and there's a reason why he's brought him in. Yeah. But yeah, I think what he's done with this offense and sort of the turnaround has been fantastic. I'm really curious to see if he ends up getting a new job somewhere else. A couple years down the line, maybe if he's getting more play calling duties or something, or a head coaching job. I mean, it's worked out for Zach Taylor, so maybe his brother.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that we'll definitely have to keep our eyes out for. But going back to your point about Christian Kirk too, he's got 1,100 receiving yards, and and I'll be honest with you, when you brought up earlier about some of the folks that some fans out there that were kind of giggling about the contract with Christian Kirk, I didn't really giggle, I'll be honest with you, but my eyebrows raised like this. I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's, if he can do well, then maybe that's kind of, a little bit of a ploy to bring in some more free agents down the road and, eventually figure something out. And, you have to make a statement. And that's kind of what they did here with Christian Kirk. But the best part is that they're also getting production out of him too. And it's really amazing to see 1,100 receiving yards. Some of these guys don't even have 500-600. And they're your number one. So, he's another one. Again, Christian Kirk, what does he bring? He brought from, obviously he was with Arizona, and now he's with Jacksonville, absolutely cashing in.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, everybody should have been kind of raising an eyebrow at the contract that Christian got. It makes sense. Like, there's no reason for you to think, oh yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. A guy who hasn't had 1,000 yards, he has only caught up to 77 catches, and that was his most recent year in an air raid system where like you're gonna get those catches, anytime with Cliff. So I understood why people were so upset about it, but the vision that Doug had for him, I guess, sort of made it make sense. I mean, you see how they use him, they move him around. He's one of the better slot receivers in the league, and he kind of was still, even while he was with the Cardinals, when they put him in the slot finally last year, he was able to explode a little bit more. I mean, you saw the production, and that's probably what led to him getting that contract. I think that what they've done with him this year, moving him around, keeping him in the slot, kind of playing matchup games, I think that's been what sort of led to that success. And now you're seeing sort of the development between him and Trevor, or you've seen it, now for a few weeks now, but just the chemistry that they have, the deep throws. I mean, it's always been Christian now. It's Christian, Zay Jones, down deep. It's those kind of plays that are being made now that have shown, how much he means to the team. I think one of the things that's sort of lost and why they brought in Christian Kirk, what they really needed to this year, not only on a coaching front as far as establishing the culture, but in the locker room, they needed guys like Christian. They needed guys like Evan. They needed guys like Zay, Foye. These are all very high character players and people where they're, all business all the time. They're out there working. Going back to Evan a little bit, Evan is out, before the game, before anybody else. He's working on catching. He has his little glasses on that I think kind of give you a strobe light effect to, work on your hand-eye coordination, different little things. And the same thing with Christian, hard worker. He does a lot for this offense. I think him and Trevor have great chemistry. So, I mean, it's just all worked out. And like I said, when you have a guy like Doug Peterson calling plays, you have a guy like Doug Peterson making game plans, and Press Taylor as well, you're going to see some success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, like I said, truly amazing to see that. And on top of it, too, for those that do not know, there was just before the trade deadline, too, the Jags also acquired Calvin Ridley for next year. He is suspended for this whole season, but he will be back next year. And obviously, that's going to be a lot of fun to see him with Trevor Lawrence and to have Christian Kirk and to have Zay Jones. And now Demetrius, the next thing also that we want to discuss, we've spoken about pretty much everybody on this roster, but just to kind of dive in a little bit more with Trevor Lawrence, he leads the way in the league with 9 lost fumbles. And, heading into the postseason, it's definitely something to watch out for, especially when you also don't have your starting left tackle, Cam Robinson, who's out for the whole year now. You lose your blind side, obviously, and really tough, again, going up against the tough Chargers team who has a solid defensive front, but again, not the defense that a lot of folks had thought about. Granted, you do have Bosa, you've got Khalil Mack as well in there too, but they haven't been making a ton of noise in the league in quite a while. So, with that being said, obviously with those 9 lost fumbles, is that something that everyone has to be on the lookout for if this team were to win against the Chargers on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. It would be ignorant to say it's not. There's been times where ball security was an issue with Trevor early on in the season, obviously in that Philadelphia Eagles game. I know it was basically in a hurricane, and that sort of, made his fumbles go up. He had 4 for that game. So it's been a season of when he gets hit on the blind side, it seems like the ball might probably come out. And I think that's an issue. He has to keep the ball up. But also, like you said, without Cam Robinson there, it is a concern. But at the same time, Walker Little, I honestly don't even remember that Walker Little's in the game because I guess he's doing that good of a job. Usually when you don't notice an offensive lineman, that means they're doing their job. So, going up against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, completely different than going up against the guys the Titans were trying out there. But, I think for the most part, it should be an okay matchup as long as Trevor keeps getting the ball out quickly. I think that's one of his traits. His best traits is he gets the ball out faster than almost any quarterback in the league, which has led to, I think they're one of the least sacked teams in the NFL. But it's the point of when they do get there, or when he scrambles, there's a chance the ball comes out. So, it's definitely something to look at, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the biggest concern for them right now.
Okay, well, that's definitely a big deal because, again, there's a lot of, we continue to see, obviously, with, when you lose your left tackle and you're, a righty quarterback, a right-handed throwing quarterback, it's, sometimes it's a recipe for disaster. And especially a team that, team playing or playing with house money kind of, you're 9-8, you're, people are coming in people are coming into your house, and it should be fun in Duval country, that's for sure. And I think the next and I think second to last question I have for you, Demetrius, a little bit about this contest on Saturday night. First off, it's on Saturday night. That's a big deal because again, this is now 2 straight primetime weekends for the Jaguars, and it's been quite a while since, I think, 2017 since we've seen that. And it's, it must feel forever. At one point there were so many talks about, this team playing one permanent London home game, a year, and seven home games in Jacksonville before the 18 game schedule came out. And then, we heard Jacksonville, could they become the first full-time London team? So many different things that are going on here. And now all of a sudden, Dougie comes in, brings in, all of his guys, and pretty much turns this entire organization around in the span of, I think, 5 to 6 games, where it really, really turned. We're, talking about this Chargers team who, Brandon Staley got a ton of flack because Mike Williams, who is oft injured, got hurt. He was on the cart. Justin Herbert was in pretty much till almost the fourth quarter. They couldn't move. They were playing. They couldn't move in the standings. So they were always going to be playing the Jaguars anyway.
Right.
Now that we've seen all of this, Mike Williams is hurt. He's not 100% to come in. There's a few other guys that were hurt in that meaningless contest. Sure, we're playing for pride. Sure, we're playing for, whatever it is. What do you see here with this Chargers team? This is not a Los Angeles team that a lot of people had pegged to be, they were supposed to be going hand in hand with, at some point, Kansas City.
Yeah, no, they've definitely fallen short of their expectations this year. I think part of that is obviously playing in the same division as Kansas City. I think still Andy Reid is one of the best coaches of all time. I think that he's done an incredible job. Kind of crazy that he's not even getting any Coach of the Year nominations, but I digress. The Chargers have been an interesting team from the aspect of, you kind of look at the roster and you look at the guys. I mean, Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. You have a bunch of guys, J.C. Jackson on the outside at corner. You have a bunch of guys that are just incredible football players on offense too. Mike Williams, Austin Eckler is one of the best pass catching backs of maybe this generation. Keenan Allen is incredible. I know he was dealing with the injuries early in the season, but this is a Chargers team that should have been really, really good. And they still are, but it's still definitely fallen a little bit short of expectations. The first time the Jaguars played them, they were banged up, bad. Like Justin Herbert probably shouldn't have even played in that game because he was basically dealing with a broken rib. So, it's definitely a different Chargers team than the Jags first found themselves playing in week 3. Austin Eckler only had I think it was 8 catches and 5 rushing attempts. It was basically nothing. I think what the Jags should expect is a completely different team in terms of, now they have Keenan Allen back. Yeah, Mike Williams might be banged up, but that sounds like it should be okay. But they're going to go up against their best, and I think that's something that the Jaguars should be sort of prepared for.
Yeah, truly amazing stuff to see. Again, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're the number 4 seed. They won the AFC South, 9-8 on the season. All right, so we're going to put you on the spot here, Demetrius. I'm also going to put Mike Szabo on the spot here too. Your prediction for this one. You'll be in the building on Saturday. I'm sure Duval country is going to be out of this world bongos. But your honest prediction, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, speaking honestly, I've been terrible at Jags predictions this year. We do a thing in the paper every week on prediction. I think I went at 6-11 or something. But to put another maybe bad prediction out there, I think the Jags probably win. I don't think it's going to be double digits or anything. Maybe 28-24, something along those lines. I think the Jags offense has been sort of hitting a lull over the past few weeks. I think this is the game that they're going to be up for. I think the Chargers defense just isn't as good if they can't get the pressure against this Jags offense that does a really good job. So I would have to say 28-24 Jags. And just to go back on the point of Jacksonville, sort of coming together with the fans, they were incredible last game. It was a sold out crowd, 70,000 fans. The fans are here. They've always been here, but it's just about finally the team is good. So I expect the same thing this Saturday, which should give them some momentum to play better.
Fingers crossed. Mike Szabo, got to put you on the spot. What do you got for Saturday night?
I wouldn't be surprised. I think Jacksonville can come away with this. I think the Chargers you've seen this year, whether it's because of injuries or whatnot, they've been a very inconsistent team this year. The Jacksonville's riding a 5-game win streak to end the season. There's always that old euphemism, you're hot at the right time coming into the postseason, and you're at home. Like you said, the atmosphere is going to be fantastic for a home playoff game, which seemed such a far cry from what you saw with the franchise just a year ago. I wouldn't be surprised. I would go Jacksonville 23-20, win on a last-second field goal.
Yeah, I was going to go right in that regard. I was going to go around 27-24. Jags win on a late field goal. And this is something else too, Demetrius, is you see all of this and you see a lot of people backing Jacksonville now. People are beginning to open their eyes about the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to fall short for what you've seen, and you've flown all over. We follow each other on Twitter. I've seen you go everywhere with them, and it's amazing. You're part of that. You're really a part of that team. So what would be for you? I guess the best thing that the Jags could take away if they do not win on Saturday, heading into the 2023 season.
Yeah, I mean, you can take away a lot of good things from this year for the Jags. I mean, the team pretty much, at least in my view, maybe they don't have the same mindset, but they're playing with house money. If they lose it, to me, it doesn't matter. I think what they found this year, the cohesion of the group, the culture shift, Trevor Lawrence, I mean, that's pretty much the big one there. I mean, what they've been able to do with this team, it's remarkable. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I had them winning 7 games, and that was sort of their top. Like for me, I thought no more than 7, maybe probably 5 or something. But they far exceeded expectations, and I just think it's a incredible turnaround job, and I think it's just something looking forward to the future. I think that's the next step is next year. I think whatever they do for the remainder of the season, if they somehow miraculously make it to the Super Bowl, even, I think that it's all about the future. This is a team that's on the rise to me. So anything that happens now is just gravy.
Well, you look at some of the numbers, 24 points per game is what they average. That's 10th in the NFL. They points against 21 points per game, which is 12th in the NFL. And 233 passing yards per game is 10th in the NFL. And rushing yards, which we didn't even get to discuss about Travis Etienne, but that's all good, 14th in the NFL at about 125 per. So that's some pretty good numbers there. And we shall see what goes on against the Los Angeles Chargers on Saturday night. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jaguars beat reporter for the Florida Times Union, Demetrius Harvey. Demetrius, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We truly appreciate it, and should be a fun time tomorrow over in Jags country.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right.